Welcome to the first episode of Breath of Life Stories. Some of the things we're going to talk about might be a little bit upsetting. They may trigger some people if they've experienced similar things. But the whole point of sharing stories is about helping each other. And if we can learn anything as we go along from other people's experiences, sometimes it may be that we can resonate with it or we can learn something, or even it's just good to share stories and help each other. Without further ado, I've got the lovely Zoe Steeper, who is the half of the Steeper family. Thank you, Lewis, for offering to be the first guest on the podcast.
Oh, no, our
We
pleasure.
want to obviously start off with just a little bit of an introduction into who you are.
My name's Zoe Steeper. I'm one of the founders of the Oliver Steeper Foundation with my wife Zoe. A foundation that should never have been created, if I'm being completely honest, because we lost Oliver, our little 9-month-old baby boy, to choking in the nursery back in September 2021. So we then wanted something to do, wanted something to combat the grief and to remember him by. So that was, the idea of the charities. We then obviously looked into charity and everything like that, and it was just an utter minefield. There's
I can imagine.
very little guidance from that. Going back into Oliver, his short little life on this planet, he was 9 months old, and as parents, we pretty much lived, month to month with bills, as probably 90% of the population does now. So we had no choice. We had to work. So we like many thousands of people went looking around nurseries, and we went to a few, and we came across the Jelly Beans nursery in Ashford, which wasn't the cheapest, it wasn't the closest, but it was. We went for the show round, and the lady there, I won't mention her name because it makes me angry, she spent the whole hour telling us, how she was a former Ofsted inspector and safeguarding was her number one priority. And we walked out of that building and said, we've struck gold. Someone who cares, has got that experience, and and wants to look after the kids to that degree, let's do it. And then the awful blunt fact following that is 7 weeks later he was dead.
7 weeks? My gosh. So you'd obviously chosen that nursery by doing a lot of checking and making sure, and you were happy and felt safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like, we wanted him to be. It's weird. You want the best for your child, but as as our first child, as new parents as such, you don't know what to look for, and that was we just went by, the fact that they were Ofsted registered. We looked at the previous, the Ofsted ratings and all that, and they I believe at the time they were a good provider. We didn't know, obviously, until very later on in all this, that they'd actually rebranded, changed the names following a previous incident where a child had overdosed on some medication. So when we searched the Jelly Beans Day nursery, none of that came up, and that was a few years before. We decided to roll with it, and we thought, let's go with it. And he did. He went there for, a very short period of time, and unfortunately he was fed penne pasta as a 9-month-old baby. From what we've seen, it wasn't cut up, it wasn't blended, because in his airway there was quite some significant pieces of pasta, which doesn't resemble being, in our opinion, top. So he went on that morning. He'd been off the week before because he'd had tonsillitis. We decided to keep him at home, and we'd actually had him to the hospital with the tonsillitis because his temperature wouldn't come down, and he was literally boiling. He was 40 degrees. So we then obviously kept him off nursery, spoke with the nursery and said, what do we do? They said, if he's on antibiotics, keep him off. So that was the best thing we did. We spent that time with him. He then went back on that Thursday, and he went in, and about 10:30 in the morning, so we got that phone call that no parent ever wants to get. They said, and we've got the 999 call, we listened to it, and it's part of the police investigation and stuff, but it just said, he's choked, and send someone effectively, and that's another element of something else we're working on, which I'll go into later. It's kind of So they phoned Zoe and said he's okay. He's had a bit of a choking incident, but he's with the paramedics. Come down, you know. So Zoe just assumed that, yeah, all right, something was wrong, you know.
Yeah.
For the ambulance to even be there, something was wrong. So she got dressed and literally drove down to the nursery to find them actually running out with him doing CPR. While they were running in the, and then she basically dumped her car in the middle of the car park, and she was told get in the ambulance. Technically, it passed away in the ambulance, but they managed to revive him. A key bit of evidence that, you know, that came to light was the ambulance crew couldn't even get an intubation in him because there was that much food in his airway. So he was without oxygen for what we thought was, you know, a few minutes at the time, but as it turns out, it was quite a substantial amount of time. I believe the figure we was given was around 90 minutes in the end, which
My
obviously
goodness.
in terms of damage was
Mm.
absolutely catastrophic. We didn't know what we was being presented with because we didn't understand any of that, you know, because as normal everyday human beings, unless you work in a medical field or you have, you know, you don't understand it all. You don't, you know, you don't get it. So we was well, Zoe phoned me, and all I got was screams, and I thought, well, what's going on? What's happening? You know,
Yeah.
I was 2.5 hours away at Stansted Airport when it all happened. So I was then trying to get back home. You know, I rang her phone back, and somebody answered. I think it was one of the paramedics in the ambulance, and I said, "Oh, we're doing CPR on Oliver," and that was all I needed to hear. I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
I literally dumped everything what I was doing, and I was back, you know, trying to get back to Kent. And I was very fortunate that when I finally did get across the Dartford Bridge, I made a phone call to one of my friends who's a traffic police officer in Kent, and I was more worried about getting a speeding ticket.
Oh, God bless you.
You know, and I said to him, I won't name him. I said to him, I said, "Look, I'm coming through. Just don't stop me, please. Don't stop. Just let me. I'll take any fines. I'll take any, you know,
Yeah.
punishment after. You know, I'm willing to gladly take that, but I need to get to the William Harvey horse at Ashford to be with Ollie." As it turns out, he did the right thing. He informed their control room. They then phoned me and said, "Where are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm at Junction 4 on the M20." And they went, "Yeah, that was quick."
Yeah.
And I wasn't going nuts because there was too much traffic around to even contemplate doing it. They then stopped me, bundled me in a car, and thankfully blue lighted me up to the hotel.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. Yes.
When we got there, the first thing, obviously, they said I was in the resource room, and I thought, that's not good. That's not good. And as it turns out, it was just the best room to put him in with the best equipment.
Yeah, yeah.
So I walked into the room, and it was just honestly like you couldn't move for the amount of people that were in there. And I managed to fight my way through to the front. You know, I'm dad. You know, let me in. And they were actually drilling his shins, and I didn't understand what they were doing. They just said, "Look, if we put a tube in here, we get things in much quicker, and they work more effectively." And I was like, "Okay," but it's that vision. And it's not the blood that was there, you know, because that was all on his legs, you know, yeah, and that was nothing to do with it. But my vision from that day he was laid in a hospital bed, and because choking doesn't give physical signs of injury, he
No.
just looks like our perfectly normal little healthy boy laid, you know, asleep on a bed. And that
Yeah.
was the hardest part of all this process to even contemplate, because had there have been, you know, blood, bruises, limbs missing, cuts, you know, you accept that that person's injured.
Yes, yeah.
But in choking and brain damage, there's absolutely nothing. This is going to sound really awful, but you know, he never woke up from the point of passing out in the nursery, and I'm kind of glad about that because you know he didn't suffer, he didn't, you know, go on
Yeah.
to wake up and be, you know, in anything traumatic kind of thing. So
Yeah.
we were then told we couldn't stay at Ashford. They didn't have the capability to deal with the injury, you know. And it's an awful thing called an injury because you can't see, like you say, you can't see anything, but you just
Yeah,
have,
it's not visible. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you know. And they said, "Oh, you know, we're gonna call the helicopter. We're gonna, you know, we're gonna get him moved to London." So then we're frantically, obviously, trying to talk to parents and, you know, tell them what we're doing, where to go, you know, and everything. Because my parents are 4 hours away up in Lincolnshire.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're trying to communicate with them. You know, what's the best plan of action? So obviously they want to come down, you know, instantly. So we obviously got in the got everything. So they, in the end, they sent a land ambulance in the end because the helicopter didn't have the equipment needed. Because he's we didn't understand it at the time, but his temperature, he was like 42. His heart rate was phenomenally high. Just thought, well, that's because because of the way he is. At the time.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, it was because the brain was already damaged,
Yeah.
and the body couldn't regulate the heart and everything
Mm.
else to go along with that. So we were then taken to London. We were told before we'd even left Ashford he wouldn't survive the journey. And P.S. because of COVID, you're not allowed to go with him.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to go in the ambulance. And I'm like, that is insane. You're telling me my son's going to die, and I can't. I said, not being funny, but I'd rather take him in my own vehicle or want another to be with him if that's what you're telling me. And in the end, we were quite thankful that the ambulance crew made some phone calls.
Yeah.
And they said, um, effectively, that's kind of what happened, and it's kind of, it's a moment that I'll never forget because other people were putting their jobs on the line effectively,
Yeah. Yeah.
what we wanted in our last moments with him, what we thought was going to be the last moments. We got to London, we got to the Evelina, and that was one of the most surrealist things I think we've ever encountered, because we knew the prospect wasn't good at that point. But then we got into the forest ward in the Evelina, and there was so many people. We went into what we call the cube because it was like an isolation thing, because all this was slap bang in the middle of COVID in
Yeah.
September.
Of course. Yeah.
And we were told just to sit on some chairs at the back of this room, and it was like a scene out of the Matrix. We're sat there frozen in time, and everyone else is going nuts,
Yeah. Yeah.
nuts around you. And this one woman, this one doctor, and out of this crowd of people, and came towards us and just said, "You need to prepare yourself. He's not going to survive this." And I was like, "What?" And I wanted to, I don't know if I can say
Yeah.
it. I
You
wanted
could say
to.
you could say whatever you want, my lovely.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I wanted to do some damage to that woman, because I thought, how
Yeah.
he's been here 5 minutes. You haven't put him in a
Yeah.
cellar, you haven't, and the awful thing is that was the best thing she could have done for us.
Yeah.
And she probably does this multiple times a week, to other families.
Yes.
Completely different scenarios and different injuries. I suppose I can name her because it was all public anyway, but Shelley Rip Hagen. So she was always consultant at the Evelina, and we owe her so much, as a
Yeah.
family, what she did for us. By her doing that, she could see I was furious, but that was her way of managing our expectations. And for,
Absolutely. Yeah. Because when
you
you're in
know,
that
you don't
space,
think
it's
about this.
hard. No,
No,
that's
you
right.
don't think about any of this. And and from that process, from her doing that, we was kind of not knocked down a peg or two, but you want the best, you want your son to survive, but
Yeah.
she sat down with us and she explained, if we put him in a scanner now, the brain is just going to look like it did yesterday, because this is the hypoxia injury takes time, like a stroke. It takes time to do the damage. So she said, if we put him in a
Yeah.
scanner, it's a waste of time. It's not going to tell us nothing. But if we did it
No.
in 2 or 3 days' time, that's when you start to see the swelling, and and you can work out a
Yeah.
prognosis from that. So we were then, obviously, it's just a weird situation to be in, because we didn't know what to do. We had the police phone in. Obviously, they were, because it was a reportable incident in a nursery. They were doing their own due diligence, and they'd sent officers to the nursery. We didn't see any of that. Oh, Zoe didn't see any of that. They were ringing up, and they were asking for updates, but the hospital wouldn't tell them what was actually going on. They were just saying, "No, well, he's in a critical, life-threatening condition." That was all they would say. It was then only on the Saturday that the police somehow got my phone number. I mean, it's on the internet. It's my work page. Obviously they knew
Yeah.
they found it, so they phoned my number. I've answered it, thinking it was the press, because they were all over it at the time there as well.
Yeah.
They found us on Facebook, and there was so many messages. They're like vultures, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we then start speaking to this detective inspector, and she said, she introduced herself and said, I'll be leading this investigation and everything like that. She said, can I ask what the outcome is looking like? I said, well, we've been told he's not going to survive. And she said, what? Obviously, they hadn't been told that up until that point.
No.
So we told her, and that was it. Then that things started moving very quickly after that. And it was at that point we kind of realised there was more to this, because up until that point we thought he'd gone to nursery, he'd choked on some food which had been correctly prepared,
Mhm.
and it was just an unfortunate accident,
Yeah.
and it was only when we got like a liaison officer at Evelina who came to us and said, I'll be talking you through things and we're giving you updates and bits and bobs. And it was only when that started to come through we actually started realising, something's not right. We couldn't
Yeah.
put our finger on it. We couldn't put our finger on it, but something wasn't right. We then, that night, we hadn't slept. We hadn't left his bedside pretty much, and from getting there on the Thursday night up until the Saturday. And there was a lovely nurse in there called Gemma, and she was so nice, putting you at ease, and and she was only young, and I have spoken to her since. She's like, I'm here to look after Ollie. This is my job. I want you two, me and Zoe, to go outside and just get a breath of fresh air. This was like 11 o'clock at night. We didn't want to do it, but she was like, not even persistent, but she's like, it will do you the world of good. Just go
Yeah.
outside. We went outside, and because of COVID, the hospital was pretty much locked down. So we had to go to this, literally, it was like a 2-mile walk down the corridors and out to this one little random entrance at the other side of the hospital. We both went outside, and both our phones pinged at the same time. And I thought, oh, here we go, it's people trying to get hold of us and bits and bobs. Anyway, it turns out it was an email from the nursery. And this was the start of the snowball for us. It said, dear parents, sorry we had to close early on Thursday. This was due to one of our staff members contracting COVID. And I'm like, you what? And I read it again and again. And I was like, they're trying to cover it up.
Yeah, that's not good.
They're literally trying to cover it up. And so I said to Zoe, and Zoe was naturally livid, say,
Yeah.
at 11 o'clock at night, I'm then trying to ring this detective inspector, who was at home in bed, bless her. Finally managed to get a hold of her. I said, we've got this email. What is this about? Because at the bottom of this email, it says we've sanitized the place and we've wiped everything down and we're going to open again as normal on Monday. I'm in utter shock.
Yeah.
So I said to the DI, I said, if they're going to open, I guarantee you I'm going to be there on Monday morning telling them what they've done to my kid, because this stinks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
She said, don't worry. We're going to make some inquiries. Send me the email, which I did, and we'll go from there. And she then said to me, they're not going to open Monday, rest assured. So just stay there, because I was,
No, I'd be the same.
yeah.
Anybody would, wouldn't they? Really?
Yeah. And we then obviously Ofsted got involved at that point, because then they then shut us down for, I think it was 12, a mandatory. I think it's 12 weeks.
Okay.
So they would look at. We got the news from the police that Ofsted had put this mandatory suspension on, and we were somewhat grateful for that, because that mean, knowing what we knew at that point, that no other children could come to harm, and they couldn't cover it up. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so we then obviously then left that with the police, and then slowly but surely over that week, more bits and bobs kept coming out from the police, and it was quite clear, although it's never been. I have to choose my words carefully here, because though it's never been proven they did anything wrong in a court of law, it is of our opinion that we know things went on that have been dismissed by the CPS. Even though three people said one girl did this, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And it gets dismissed because it's their word against hers. But I can't say what happened. I really want to, but because it was not proven, it's unfair to make that allegation, even though I rightly, I've lost a child.
Yeah. No, I totally understand you. I get. Yeah, I know what you mean.
One girl was arrested for for what went on. We got that news, and we was like, what? And they said, oh, we can't tell you till we've done the interviews and everything like that. So that went through and everything like that, and it just the police investigation went nuts. So it absolutely went nuts at that point. And we tried to focus on it. We tried to put it to the back of our minds and just focus on the time we had with Ollie, because we knew, things weren't going to end well as such. And so they got on, they came up to the hospital, they said, well, we need to interview you as parents. And I'm like, we weren't even there. It's the strange, most bizarrest thing ever. But, the lady that came, Kate, I'll never forget her. She was so lovely. We sat in this room, and I said, are we suspects? Because we weren't even there. She went, no. We need to build, for any future prosecutions, etc. We need to build a case for Ollie to make sure he had a good home life, and he was looked after. And I said, well, that puts a completely different stance on what we was expecting, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
of course, yeah.
we did all that, and she said, we said, you want to meet him? And, she came into the room and everything. And and it was lovely to have some normality, in that time. Because we couldn't see family. They were literally confined to the cafe down the other side of the hospital, because they weren't allowed upstairs because of COVID and stuff like that. So we then got to what we call day 6. We knew he'd gone downhill in that time because his eyes actually stopped responding to light. So they said, that is not a good sign. There's no point. So there's no point pretending that anything's getting better. We might as well just have the truth, and that we was grateful for that. We then got to day 6, and they said, right, there's not a lot else we can do other than doing a brain stem test, which I think we already knew what the results were going to be. They tried to take him off the ventilator and and everything, the machine and such, and he went downhill rapidly. So they put it back on, and it was the machine that was keeping him going, even though he was never conscious. But at the end of it, day 6, I'll never forget it, because one of his, I call it a gift, one of his gifts he gave was, we had 2 ladies come into the room, and I was at probably my lowest point at that point, and I was sat in a chair, just my hands, in my head, and I was pretty much crying uncontrollably. No man wants to ever admit to that, to crying. I was having a moment to myself, and she sat on the bed next to us, and she said, "Mr. Have you ever considered organ donation?" And I stood up, and I was literally, I was going to swear at this woman, and I said, "What a time to ask me if I want to give my organs up when I die, when my son is here on this bed dying, And she went, "Not you, Mr. Steeper, Ollie." And I was like, "Don't."
Oh, bless you.
And I looked at Zoe, and she looked at me, and we didn't even say a word. We both just turned to the nurses and said, if we can do something, we will. I know a lot of people don't agree with, giving organ donation, and I respect that. I've never even thought about it, up until that point when you're forced into it,
Yeah.
So we managed to we went back to the police. That we said yes, we went back to the police. The police then got hold of the coroner, because he was having to go for a home office post-mortem, which means obviously all the organs have to come out for inspection. Effectively, the brain had to come out, the whole lot. We said, whatever we can, we can do, then let's do it. And they'd come back. The coroner had come back and said, because of the injuries and the police investigation ongoing, the only things you can take are his kidneys and his liver, and that was the only thing that you could take. So we agreed with that. Come and saw us and said, look, well, now the process starts of finding a donor, or a recipient.
Yeah.
And so we waited and waited and waited, and then they come back, and it was about 10 o'clock at night, and they said, we found a recipient. And we was like, okay, so that's it. And she said, well, tomorrow morning we need to arrange it all, and etc. Now, we didn't find out until afterwards, but and it's a horrible word, but just to harvest his organs, and that's the proper term for it. It's a horrible word. They actually flew a surgical team from Leeds to London just to perform that one operation, because it was that precious. They told us it would be very quick and very blunt. We knew once they turned the machines off, obviously it could be quite quick, and in the end it was. I think it was about 6 minutes or something like that for him. But we'd become almost experts. The machines, all the monitors and that, because
Yeah.
when you're there, you're asking questions. So
Yes,
we
of
knew
course,
what
yeah.
it was, the blood pressure and the heart rate and everything like that, and when the end did come, it was nice because, what the Evelina did for us as a family, the nurses and stuff, they made it so special. We had a laptop in there and we was playing, of all things, the Hey Dougie theme tune. But that's what he liked.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then they said, right, we're gonna turn the machine off now, and they did. They did a brain stem test, which proved there was no brain activity at all. So he was, that was going to be it. So we turned the machine off, and say 6 minutes later, and they warned us, you get a minute,
Yeah.
and then it's awful because they'd obviously pre-warned us, but they said someone is going to grab your baby and they're going to run as fast as they can with him. And we signed up to it, we'd agreed to it.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, the quicker they get them out of Ollie, the better it is for the recipient, the better
Yeah.
chance. And so we was fine with that. So we obviously then came and this lady, I've never seen anyone run so fast. We had the minute, and then that was it. She grabbed him and off she went. So we then went downstairs, and they knew the next time we come downstairs that he'd passed. He'd gone. We went downstairs, and then they phoned us and said, he's back. About 2 hours later, he's back. Do you want to come and do some things with him? So we went upstairs and we give him a bed bath, and it was literally just like a plaster on the chest. It was so tidy,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't even you wouldn't even recognise anything's been done. Other than that. So we gave him a bed bath and we sung him some songs, and we did bits and bobs with some handprints and bits, the bits and that.
Yeah.
And
Well, you
then
got me going now, look. I told
yeah,
you.
I'm close. I'm close. And then I said to Zoe, I said, if we stay in here, because the Evelina was so lovely. They said, you can stay here as long as you want.
Yeah, that's good.
But I said to Zoe, and it is personal preference, because some people might stay a long time just to get that time.
Yeah.
Zoe, if we stay in this room, we're just going to torture ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to be blunt and just make that break. So we did. And the hardest part of this entire journey up until then was not walking out of that room, because we knew what had happened. We'd accepted
Yeah.
that. But we walked out into the corridor, and all the nurses are just walking by, and I stopped one of the nurses, and I says, "What do we do now?" She went, "You go home."
Yeah.
And that was so blunt,
Yeah.
and we just had to. We literally went downstairs and saw family, and said we want to go home. So we came. We actually stayed in London for another night in a hotel, just to try and not go home, because you don't want to
Yeah.
go home. Everything's as you left it. And
Yeah. You know what, Lewis? Just listening to you talking, I've not met you in person, but I just wish I could give you a big hug, because do you know what? This is why me getting to work with LifeVac is such an honour, because I just think that, and obviously you're going to explain what you're doing and everything, but you've gone through something that no parent ever wants to. I've got 3 kids and 3 grandkids and another one on the way, and the
it's the
thought of it is
way
just,
round in the cycle of life.
it is.
You're born into the world, and you accept that parents are going to pass.
That's
That
right, yeah.
you
Yeah.
never expect it to be the other way around.
No.
You're thrown into this world of unknown, and other parents we've met, that have gone through the same thing, have said,
Yeah.
it's an elite club that no one ever wants to be a member of.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
totally agree with that, because I want nothing more but to have Ollie here.
Yeah. What was Ollie like?
Oh, he was a little bundle of joy.
His picture, he just looks such a gorgeous little fellow. He's just so
Yeah,
cute.
yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was swapped in the hospital.
You said that to me before, didn't you? Oh, bless you.
He was such, I mean, obviously he was only 9 months, but that first 9 months of his life, he was
Mm.
what was an absolute joy.
Yeah.
We weren't ready-made parents by any means, we were thrown into a whole world of that because I would like, during COVID as well, during the
Yes.
pregnancy, I wasn't allowed into scans, I weren't allowed into doctor's appointments, or anything, so I just kinda like, at one point, I wasn't even gonna be allowed at the birth, but
Crazy, isn't it?
thankfully
Crazy.
thankfully I was, but, it was, but he, changed our lives, dramatically for the better. You
Yeah.
know, and yeah, we had a Father's Day out of it, and that was special, and you don't realise how special that is till they're not there.
No, exactly. I mean, for me, my kids are all grown up and I remember things and I think, wish I could go back to those moments. But I think when you've lost a child, my brother passed away, as I said to you. So I've obviously not lost a child, but from my parents' perspective, I think all of those moments throughout that 9 months for you would have been so many memories that are so precious, and you probably
Absolutely,
even more so because
absolutely.
when we're stuck in everyday life, we just get consumed by everything, don't we? So obviously, I just think that is just every parent's worst nightmare, and you've gone through all that, and you and Zoe have gone on to have another little boy. What's your other son called?
Jake, boy,
Jake.
stop that.
How old is Jake now?
So Jake's about he's 3.5 now going. We call him a three-nager 'cause he's
Three-nager. Love
3
it.
going on, like, 13. No daddy,
Um,
no daddy, no daddy.
oh, bless him. So obviously you've got that going on. So you've got another little boy who is never going to be a replacement for Ollie, but obviously I suppose as parents, I can imagine only a little bit that it's probably made you be very cautious about lots of
Yeah,
things.
absolutely, even we vowed that we'd never put him into a nursery, ever,
Yeah,
after what happened, because the trust had gone,
yeah,
you know, and but again, you get thrown into back into your life. You've got to
yeah,
work,
yeah,
and we literally we was very grateful that there was a childminder down the road from us where we used to live, literally like 5 doors down, and she was wonderful,
yeah,
we put all our trust into Emma, and she did pretty good things, out of that, and we were so taken back by how nice she was, and respecting our story as well, and
yeah.
she
Of
knew what
course.
she knew what had gone on and everything. And then it became very apparent, when he was getting 2 years old, that he needs to be around other kids now because I think she had 2 or 3 there with him.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we sat on the sofa, we rolled our eyes out because we did, we never wanted to go that path in life. But again,
yeah,
as I said earlier, you're left with no choice.
yeah.
We're living month on month. We took a massive hit financially because after Ollie died, I was back at work 2 weeks later because I'm self-employed. If
Mm.
I don't go to work, we don't pay the bills. It's as simple as that.
And I don't think people realise that, obviously this is, a big thing. It's the knock-on effect of, I was
Hmm.
saying to someone today about, obviously with LifeVac saving over 6,000 lives, it's not just 6,000 lives saved, that's 6,000 families still together. Then you think of the friends, the neighbours, the wider community, the schools,
Yeah,
and so many
absolutely.
people are affected, but they don't think about, like for you, parents, like you say, you've got to go back to work when you've just lost your child.
Hmm.
I'm not being funny, but when my grandma died, I was like, I don't want to go work because I was so sad. And
Hmm.
that was my granny was an old lady and it was her time. Whereas
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
with your
yeah.
son and I think that it's such a difficult time for you. But you've changed everything around. I don't mean that in a way where obviously Oliver is very much the focus of all of this, but so
Absolutely. Yeah.
just explain a little bit what happened next then for you with how you've managed to navigate such a horrible, horrible thing, my lovely.
We basically said to each other that we need a focus all the way through up until the point of starting the charity or thinking about starting the charity, the police investigation and everything was our focus because we were getting regular updates and we was keep. So that became pretty much our focus. And then we happened to stumble across LifeVac, which was actually a message sent to me by Matt Bannigan, and I watched the training video and I thought, wow. It was the and at
Yeah.
that point, there were still restrictions on it, and we didn't know anything at that point of what the
Yeah.
restrictions meant, and we didn't even know the restrictions were in place. We just saw this device, a
Yep.
toilet plunger, as I think Zoe called it.
That's what I said when I first joined, and he says it's
Yeah,
not a toilet plunger. I said it
yeah.
looks like one.
And we said, well, what if we can put one of these into every single nursery across the country? And that was we discussed various different ideas, like giving, because one of the other things that we was going to look at was like financial grants to give to parents that were in our position, because when we were in London there was absolutely no support whatsoever. We was there on with the clothes on our back. We couldn't even go shopping,
Yeah.
because it's just, yeah, it's a I was dressed in bright orange trousers and a bright orange t-shirt. I looked like a hospital porter.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, so we then obviously watched the videos and everything, and then I got in touch with Matt, and I was like, if we want to become a charity, and make a legacy out of, for
Yeah.
Ollie and keep his name alive. So we had some conversations with Matt and with Eric, and Marie and everyone, and said, this is something we really, really want to do. And we got more involved. Matt actually came to our old house, and we sat down and he did some demonstrations, and we was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And that became the mission. We then went to the Charities Commission and said, hey, we want to start a charity. They went, medical device? Oh, not sure about that. So
Yeah.
we then spent the best part of a year with the help from a lovely lady called Sally, who was very kind. She does like turn CICs into charities for a living. So she was very, very kind to help us out with that. And we then became a registered charity. And then we did the first one at the nursery directly behind where it happened with Oliver, the incident that happened, because they suffered so much with business after that because people thought it was them. So
Gosh, yeah.
we went to the nursery that was called Little Acorns, and we went to them and said, look, we've started a charity, we've got registered, etc. We've done some fundraising, and we want you to be our first device. P.S. We'd like to bring the world's media along with us. Because the media obviously had followed us quite closely with everything we were doing. The
Yeah.
bulk of it was because I don't say this about every media person, because we work with some absolutely wonderful, lovely people
Yeah.
from the
Of
media
course, yeah.
eventually. But there is still some utter vultures out there who just want the gossip.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's always like that, isn't there? Something happens and then everyone
Yeah,
comes
yeah, yeah.
out and
You know, we
has an
we
opinion.
we was asked to go on, prime time TV shows and stuff and talk about the charity. But when it turned out, they didn't want to know about the charity. They just wanted to gossip on what happened to Ollie. I can't do it
Yeah.
because at that point we were still in the police investigation, and and the coroner and the inquest and stuff like that. So we had to turn it all down. Yeah, so we started the charity. We did the press launch of the charity at Little Acorns, and the BBC came, and there was loads of other, and it went all over the telly, and it was wonderful. Matt was there, we
Yeah.
joking Charlie, even got the BBC presenter to do it, to have a go.
Actually remember seeing it. So I saw that TV that on the TV at the time. And obviously this is way before I joined LifeVac. So when I
Yeah,
went for my interview there, I didn't even know I knew it was a medical device, that was it. And then
mm,
when I saw it, I was like, I know about this.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um so it was so I saw you a long time ago,
yeah.
stalking you.
So then we obviously carried on fundraising, and we under the branding of the Oliver Steeper Foundation as a registered charity,
Yeah,
and we just started buying life hacks. We started. I think we bought like 20, and we put them in our old conservatory, and we was literally like saying to people, we've got a life hack, we want to donate it to nurseries, and it went nuts.
yeah,
It went nuts, I kid you not. And then obviously the restrictions were lifted in that, I think it was the June of 2023,
yeah,
and that opened the doors for us. Because LifeVac obviously predominantly had only been in the elderly care sector. We then took it
yeah,
and enrolled it into the early years sector.
yeah.
And now, in our first year as a charity, we raised, I think it was £93,000.
Wow.
And I don't know how we done it because we both work full time, and we'd just done the summer fairs, and obviously because we was quite a relevant charity locally, everybody knew who we were,
Yeah.
from being the news and been following that, for the years it had been ongoing, and people were quite receptive to helping a local charity, and we was quite lucky that our local Freemasons, they donated £8,000 to us, and that was
Wow.
100 devices off the bat, and that was just incredible. I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
going to that meeting with them, and they were saying, "We want to donate," and I'm sat there in tears, thinking, "How? Why are you giving me this money?" And it was just, and yeah, coming up to our end of our second year now as a charity, and I think we've done 160 something thousand now altogether, and we've provided 1,850 LifeVac kits now to nurseries, preschools, and childminders all the way across the UK. We
That's
we we,
fantastic.
we
All
started in
across the UK. I love it.
the funny thing is, we started in Ashford, in our hometown,
Yeah.
because that's where we wanted to go. And within, I don't know, a week, we had nowhere else to go in Ashford. So we thought, "Right, we'll now go to Canterbury, we'll go to Maidstone." And then we thought there's got to be a better way of doing this, because people were just emailing us saying, "Oh, we've seen you on the TV, we've seen what you're doing, we'd love to get one of these devices." And we're like, "Yeah, we'll put you on a waiting list." But that waiting list soon became like 300 people long. And it soon became apparent that, we couldn't run a charity with a waiting list because it's not fair on people.
Yeah.
So we managed to fill that backlog, and we got rid of, and then we started an application process. So now we open it once a month for 30,
Yeah.
40 devices, whatever, normally on the first of every month. And then that's how we do it now. So then it's first come, first serve, effectively. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
what I don't want to do as a charity is promise someone they've signed up for one and then it doesn't turn up for months.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather it be the other way around. So that's the decision we made on that, and obviously we put it through our trustees, and even one of our trustees is actually one of the paramedic that went to Wally on the day, Anise, and
Oh,
she's
brilliant.
she supported us right from the start, and yeah, it's lovely, it's really
See, life
lovely.
has a funny way of showing up for us sometimes, and obviously,
Yeah,
when you've had such a
yeah.
tragedy, you've ended up making lots of amazing friends, but
Mhm.
also you're now doing something that will essentially protect other children in who and I know that that doesn't change what happened with Oliver, but is a huge legacy, isn't it? And it's
Everything we do with the charity's got his face on it.
yeah,
You know, time
yeah,
we go out I mean, you've probably seen yourself the booklets that go out with all our donated devices. They've all
yeah,
got, facial over it. Every single life pack that goes out in the
yeah,
UK now has got one of our charity leaflets in it that has Ollie's face on it, and that's
yeah,
incredible for us. The reach is phenomenal.
yeah.
Just to keep his little face alive is just,
Absolutely. So, where's the furthest a life hack has gone in the UK? Where's the furthest location?
So we on our website we do actually have a map, but I think it's Aberdeen.
Is it
So yeah,
brilliant?
right at the top of Scotland there. We Oh, actually, no, saying that, there is one in the MOD school in Gibraltar. We sent one to
Is
Gibraltar.
there?
Yeah, yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm more than happy to go do the training,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
but yeah, it's kinda, the charity was such a good focus to not stray you away from grief,
Yeah,
do something that kept his name alive, kinda, like, settles the grief, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Someone told
I've
me.
always said that. So the way that I've dealt with grief is I've always said that grief is love that you have to give that's nowhere to go because
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
person's not there, but you've put your love into the
yeah,
Oliver
yeah.
Steeper Foundation, and I think that's probably what's given you a little bit of a, and I'm sure it's still
Yeah,
hard.
yeah.
I'm sure it's
Oh,
gonna be hard
absolutely.
forever because
Yeah, yeah.
but it is amazing.
Someone once said to me very early on, grief is not something you get over, it's something you learn to live with. And that
Absolutely.
is absolutely
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Just to go back into the organ donation thing, by the way,
That's all right.
we actually found out, and I've got a certificate up on the wall here, but his kidneys went to a 60-year-old male who'd been on
Oh,
dialysis for, I think it's 2.5 years, and is
wow.
now off dialysis, and we don't know who he is, other than he's in the Northeast somewhere. He has the option to
Yeah.
contact But I'm guessing because our case was so high profile,
Yeah.
he might not want to contact us because yeah, and I get that. I
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
get that, but just knowing that, we saved a bloke's life, or give him a better quality of life, off dialysis,
Yeah.
we've never gone through anything like that. I just, you see online about people having to go to the hospital, 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
That's painful in its own right.
Yeah.
If Ollie's give him a new outlook on life, then I do hope we cross paths one day, and his liver was
Yeah.
actually, there's a technical term for it and I cannot remember it, but his liver was sliced into really fine slices.
Yeah.
And what they do is now when they get someone who's born with like a liver defect or
Yeah.
gets a liver condition, they lay his liver over their liver and it rejuvenates it. And
It's incredible.
I just think the
That's
technology is
incredible.
amazing.
Yeah. So that's multiple lives that will. Yeah.
They said to us that they couldn't update us individually on that, but
Yeah.
I think there was almost 100 slices. So if that's 100 people, he's done
That's just
us proud.
incredible. And like you say, it's amazing what they can do nowadays. And that was that's your little boy, and he's done incredible things. And you as a family have just, well, you've blown my mind. You've made me cry. And
I
you know,
promised you I would.
I knew I would anyway. I'm such an empath, and I sitting here and I've got goosebumps, and my heart's pounding, and all sorts. I just feel things, and I know how much I love my children, and to listen to you talk so openly about it, it's just so inspiring, and I'm so grateful that you've done this, and hopefully people that are listening will understand a little bit more about how these things do happen out
Huh?
of the blue. And
Yeah.
obviously your situation, there was other stuff going on, but I don't think people really think about choking and until it happens to you.
And
Do I suppose it's
one thing I say, because obviously I go to the nurseries now and I do the training with them. We got the mannequin and everything like that. And one thing I say, his choking doesn't discriminate. Doesn't matter male,
absolutely,
female,
yeah,
how old you are. It's there. Wait, and anyone can choke.
yeah.
With a little story for us, but we've actually used LifeVac to save Jake's life.
Wow,
So
what happened there?
he actually choked on Calpol of all things. You know,
Bloody hell, God.
um, so there's a little bit more to it. He had tonsillitis at the time. Zoe just put the Calpol in him, and as she syringed the Calpol, and he went into a feeble convulsion. So when the temperature goes up too quickly in the body goes into a seizure.
Yeah,
And obviously, he hadn't swallowed the Calpol. So he's on the floor, fitting, he comes out the fit, and I literally watched the colour drain out of him.
my God.
So Zoe's on the phone to 999, she's in, 100% panic mode, screaming, I can't lose another
Mm,
child, and etc. I'm sat there thinking, light bulb moment. In my conservatory, I've got some life facts. He's quite clearly not breathing. Give it a go.
and it
Honestly,
worked.
one pump, one place push pull, and I've never seen so much crap come out of a baby. And he took a gasp, and I literally watched the colour come back in him. I'm of the strong belief that LifeVac saved his life, and that morning, it was 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning.
Yeah. Good Lord. I don't even know what to say to you. I mean, blimey, that's like,
For us, it cemented that LifeVac is an absolute necessity in any home.
absolutely. Yeah.
'Cause we were very fortunate. The ambulance was very quick that night. But you hear horror stories, and obviously the ambulances now are stretched far and thin, and they have an 8-minute target, and sometimes they're unfortunately no fault of the crews, but they're so stretched.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a conversation that I have regularly with people. We get a lot of pushback from first aid trainers because it's
Yeah,
not mandatory. And I actually had one that's just recently sent me a LinkedIn picture of an order that he's placed for LifeVac. And I said, wow, I can't believe you've ordered one. And he says, I can't argue with over 6,000 lives saved. And today he's been sharing about it, and he's having the barrage of stuff said to him and it's like, just because something isn't mandatory doesn't mean that it's not saving lives, it's not
no, that's
doing,
it.
and you get all
That's it.
sorts said to you, don't you? And it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
crazy.
When But
Sorry, go on.
when we first started going, we had a paramedic come to us who was a genuine paramedic and basically said to us, "I'll do everything in my power to make sure none of these devices ever get put in a nursery."
Mm.
It turns out he had a first aid training company on the side.
Yeah.
That was why that was.
I've had people say the same to me, like, even if this becomes mandatory, this toilet plunger is not going to be used. I will refuse. And I thought, well, if it's mandatory, I don't see how you're going to do that, but there you go.
No, that's
But
it, you know.
my point is that for me personally, I've obviously seen people choking. I've had a choking incident myself, but it wasn't anything, I was fine. And it's kind of like, if you've got something there that you never have to use, then that's
Yeah.
great. But if you do need it, and like with Jake,
Uh-huh.
it was there because the charity, you had that, you used
Yeah.
it, it worked.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
alternative doesn't bear thinking, and this is what I can't grasp, why people are so strange about it. But thankfully, we have a lot of support for LifeVac. And since I've been in the Southwest talking about it more, people didn't know what it was. And then they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I carry it around with me and I'm getting it out and I'm showing them. And it is a fantastic device. And before we go, I'm going to ask this question to everybody that comes on the podcast. So, what is the one thing that you would want to share to people, whether it's to parents, whether it's to just the general public, that you would say now is really important after going through what you've had happen? What one thing would you say that they should consider looking into? Not necessarily buying LifeVac, but like, what do they need to do, in your opinion?
Well, there's so many things off the back of what we've been,
You can say
you
so
know.
many things. I don't mind if you've got more than one. Because
I
at the
mean,
end of the day, I want people to go away informed. You've experienced what we talk about all the time. You've had it in real life,
you
and
know,
you now are in a position where you can share that with others to help.
the first thing is don't go anywhere without life hack. That is the penultimate for us. But we learned so much so quickly in terms of like parenting and childcare facilities, and
Hmm.
settings and stuff like that. And one of the big things that came up in Oliver's case was Ollie was only meant to be on pureed foods only, and yet they were feeding him solids.
Yeah.
So we now, we try and encourage parents to talk to nurseries, and we did a
Hmm.
campaign with the local council that went national called Stage Not Age, because just because
Hmm.
a child is 6 months old and the NHS website says that 6 months old they can eat pasta doesn't mean that they're ready to eat pasta.
Hmm.
So just I think working with your nursery, no good nursery is going to bat you away for asking the right questions. So just
Yeah.
think about if your child's ready to move up to solids, or you think are ready, get them to introduce it, or but cut it open, and prepare. I think preparation is certainly in nursery is the key. And I have to say, all the nurseries that I've been to now, since Ollie passed and since we started the LifeVac journey, all of them have just been incredible.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't know my story. They just think I'm
Yeah.
just random, walking off the street, coming in to do some training.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
I tell the story, and they said, "Wow, that's really made me think." That's everything
Yeah.
to us. That
Yeah.
awareness just around food preparation, is key, and it's not just in nurseries; it's in homes as well.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely. Yeah.
certainly have a life out there ready to go should traditional methods not work.
Oh, well, do you know what? I can't wait to meet you both in person and give you both a big hug and hopefully meet Jake as well. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
No, no, thank you.
I obviously never got to meet Oliver, but I just can tell incredible little boy and credible family. And anybody listening who's, not had a tear in your eye from listening
He
to this,
he
then there's
he used
something
to
wrong with you.
he used to laugh at trees blowing in the wind, hence we've got this humongous
Bless
tree.
Oliver's tree. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you again. Like I say, it's a tragic story, but you're turning that tragedy into something positive in so many ways, so many ways. And the fact that you've gone on to then use the life fact to save Jake as well is just incredible. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
I hope that wasn't too difficult for you to talk about. I know it's
Not at all, no.
No.
It does tug at the strings, but,
Yeah, of
I think
course.
to turn our story into awareness,
Mhm.
he's like he's gold dust. So, and that people that listen, that just means everything to us, And then I think just off the back of that, if anyone does wish to make a donation towards the charity, tosf.org.
Fantastic. I will be sharing information when the podcast goes out as well, because it's going to go on YouTube with the video, and then obviously it'll be on all the other channels as well.
Okay.
I do wish you all a lot of love and kindness, and thank you again. So
Well,
that's
great.
it. That's
Thank you
the
for
that's
having us.
the end
Yeah.
of the first Breath of Life stories. And for anyone that wants to possibly come on and tell their story, please do. There's room for everybody. We've all got one or two stories within us. And if you think it's going to help people inspire or just even make people feel less alone, then please do send me a message and get in touch. Breath of Life Stories is sponsored LifeVac Europe Limited. So thank you, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you.